petit patron.
Hi, Susan. I think we're ready to start.
Oh my goodness, there's 17 people here. I'll just admit people if I see them coming on, okay?
I'll just tell people housekeeping stuff before the real intro.
Sure.
While we're waiting, because I know people will be coming in.
Yeah, I'm admitting them as they come in.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Just a few housekeeping things. There'll be a question and answer after Susan's presentation. So if you would keep your mics muted, that would be great, just so we don't hear any background noise. That's pretty much it for housekeeping. And we'll just wait a moment and then I'll do the real introduction. So happy to see everyone. Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you all for coming. I'm excited. I see people I know. Hi. Hi, Roz. My mother, my aunts, my good friend Susan. Jeff Barron, I can't see you, but I know you're there.
Hi, Jeff.
So, oh, there you are. Hey, sweetie, how are you? You're muted. It's okay. Hello. I'm going to unmute. Can I unmute everybody for a second?
Yes, you can hit unmute all.
It says mute all, but I can't see unmute.
I'll unmute everyone. I'll try.
Let's just unmute for a second because I actually want to talk to everybody for a minute.
Hi.
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 Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this Friday night.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Shabbos.
Marie.
Hey, hi, everybody.
Shalom.
Good Shabbos, yeah.
It is
Shabbos. Yes.
So I think we're ready. I think we're ready. I think we've got a lot of people. So let's start. I'll just start. Okay. First of all, thanks to Susan Schrott for being with us to talk about the Tree of Life quilt, but also to talk about creating love from despair. I think everyone's going to feel inspired as you hear about how Susan took something so tragic and brought people in the community together to create something beautiful and lasting for the people of Pittsburgh. Just a little bit about Susan. She lives on Shelter Island. She's not only a textile artist, but she also helps people in a lot of other ways. As a clinical social worker, an eating disorder specialist and supervisor, and as a certified yoga teacher. So with that, I will hand you over to Susan Schrott. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you for that really nice introduction. I want to thank Jocelyn and Terry, the director, Terry Lucas of the Shelter Island Library, for inviting me to do this. I think it's really, really timely, both in the world and that the Tree of Life shooting and massacre happened literally, it'll be in 4 days, 2 years ago in 4 days. So with that, I thought with the pandemic and all that's happening in the world and the political world, which we will not touch tonight.
Good idea.
I'm just letting you know, if anybody talks about politics, I'm going to mute you because it's about love and light and healing. And so for that, I have a lovely slideshow tonight that I wanted to share with you. And in 1 minute, I'm going to switch screens with Jocelyn so I can become, Jocelyn, we haven't screen shared yet, not yet. So we practiced the technology of this today, so wish me luck. But first, I'm just going to ask everybody to indulge me. I decided as I turned 64 this year, oh, who's here? Let me let her in. That I'm going to do whatever I want. And I don't care if I embarrass my children or anybody, frankly, because I trust that what I have to say is important. And I really, really mean this when I say this. I am just the vehicle. I am nothing more than a vehicle for what you're about to see. The source comes through me, and I am a vehicle. And I truly believe that I am a vehicle of light and love and healing. And whatever comes through me is what comes out of me, good, bad, and ugly, and sometimes pretty, I hope, because I like that. So with a minute before we switch screens and I start the slideshow, I'm going to invite everyone to just go with me or not, it's your choice, to close your eyes for a second and take a nice deep breath, but a big deep breath, so that you're going to really fill up your belly and let it out. We all walk around holding in our bellies. Don't. Fill it with prana, with life, with energy, with light and love. And when you can't hold any more energy and light and breath in that belly, just let it out. And let that sound vibrate through you, and knowing that right now, we're going to go through this together as a community. I'm just the vehicle. And when you're ready, open your eyes, and I'm going to screen share with Jocelyn now. And just notice how it feels to have done that one moment within yourselves. And know that we are not watching this alone, we're together. So I'm going to open up a PowerPoint now, and we're going to begin the story of how I decided to create the Tree of Life for Pittsburgh. And I'm going to just change my view as best I can. Well, I can't. Can you see the entire screen, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes.
Okay, I just have to go back for a minute to this from the beginning. Okay, there now, you're all on my side. Well, looks like you want to see my granddaughter. So this is the finished product of the Tree of Life for Pittsburgh. And I just want to start by saying that it is still in my possession. And it'll stay in my possession until the synagogue is open. It is not open. And it probably won't be for at least another year because it was completely decimated. And so what they have done down there is they've started a committee called the Gift Committee, because I am just one of probably hundreds, maybe of thousands of people who sent artwork down and all kinds of beautiful, heartfelt creations that they wanted to share with the Tree of Life community. So I'm holding on to this, and I just want to preface this by saying, and I mean this, if anyone knows at the end of this, if you're so inspired to share this story, either in your own lives or in your own organizations or schools or any place you think this would be helpful for our children and our community, I'm happy to still continue to share it and display it and talk about it. So with that, I will begin. It's quite large, and I am dedicating this to our new granddaughter, Samara Earl, who came into our world on August 17th at 3:59 in the afternoon. She's a strong woman, and I dedicate this talk to her and all the children around the world who are our future. We bless them and really hope that in the days and months and years to come, we can create some love and peace in this world that we really need. So this slideshow is a discussion about my literal process of how I made the quilt. It is a quilt, it's quite large, and I kept notes, both about the process. I took visual notes, and I wrote things as well. And you'll see what was happening in the world at the time and what I did to respond to it. And the outcome of this quilt is really to say that I really believe in the greatest times of despair and pain and grief and sorrow, there is with each and every one of us the ability to create beauty and love and to connect and to spread light and love. And this was how I chose to do it and to deal with my pain. So on Saturday, October 27th, our world as we knew it was changed forever. I felt hopeless, I was shocked, and I was furious and angered. And I thought immediately, this is the way my brain works. What can I do? I'm a therapist, I'm an artist, and I think that in both of my worlds, my aim is to inspire healing and compassion and empathy. So I knew I needed to do something, blending those two practices. I have for decades made trees of life, and they've been sold, and I've gifted them. I've made wedding presents with them, and it really touched me to my core that the name of this synagogue, on top of the tragedy of it, was the Tree of Life Synagogue. And I thought, that's it. Whatever I do, it has to be a Tree of Life. On Shelter Island, I've gone from being a summer kid to a year-rounder now, and we live here now, and I work from here now. And I have a very, very dear friend who I'm sure many of you know, Kathleen Lynch, who's the president of the school board. It was Sunday night, and I emailed her, Kathleen, I need to make a Tree of Life. I want to do it with the children at the school. Can we do this? And at the time I was living here part-time. By that night, I got an answer. Yes. She got in touch with Dr. Christine Finn, who at the time was the principal of the school. And that night, she got in touch with Stephanie Seriani, who I also know as Stephanie Needham, who is the art teacher at the school. Monday morning, I had a green light to go ahead and bring this vision of a magnificent tree that I wanted to just get created and sent to the synagogue in Pittsburgh to share love from us, this little island, to them. And then it was going to be out of my hands, and that was how I was dealing with this horror, this absolute horror. So I got a lot of outpouring of love from the small little community here on Shelter Island. And it took me through the dark, cold winters, and it involved literally almost 200 people to make this piece of art. And I am forever grateful to them, each and every one of them, and you will meet them. And together we created and expressed our love that we will be sending down to Pittsburgh when the time is right. We are fiercely connected to all the congregants in the community in Pittsburgh, and we must always say never again. First, we can't talk about anything without acknowledging the victims of this horrible murder. So I say each of their names out loud because we need to remember their names and we need to say their names. Irving Younger, Daniel Stein, Joyce Feinberg, Richard Gottfried, Rose Mellinger, Jerry Rabinowitz, Cecile Rosenthal, David Rosenthal, Bernice Simon, Sylvan Simon, and Melvin Wax. May their memories be a blessing. And not only that, but may their murders and their memories be an inspiration to us to continue to do things in this world that inspire love and peace, not hatred. The next day was Monday, October 28th, and the American Jewish Community put out, the American Jewish Committee put out a call for everybody, Black, white, Asian, Muslim, doesn't matter, to show up at a synagogue, to come together to celebrate Show Up for Shabbat. And I made a mental note of that, and my husband and I planned to do that. So Monday, I wrote these thoughts down and I share them with you, that I will be spending the day with the students at the high school and my neighbors creating a Tree of Life for Pittsburgh Synagogue. I hope that it'll be filled with messages of hope and healing and compassion and resilience. And I started that night the process of preparing the supplies to bring to these children at the Shelter Island High School. And the thing about the Shelter Island School, I said high school, but the Shelter Island School goes from kindergarten to high school. So I had the absolute privilege of working with little kids and big kids. And it was unbelievable, as you'll see. The Shelter Island Reporter was really, really supportive, and they put a piece in the paper the next day of a previous Tree of Life I had done. And I had asked them to write that I would be doing this, and that on November 3rd, after I work with the kids, my studio, which we're in now, and I'm going to show you a close-up of the piece later, that neighbors and people in the community where my door was open, that people could just come on in and make a leaf for the Tree of Life. And I can't wait for you to see what that was like. So thank you, Shelter Island Reporter. You're always supportive of me and my work. And I think this helped because people did come. So Monday night, after I finished working, I went down to my basement. I have a studio in my basement. I call it a dye studio. It's just a dingy little mop sink. And I had yards of white fabric that looked like that before I started. This is what everything looked like. That bucket is white cotton. And this was all the work that I needed to do to get to school on that Friday for the children. So when I was ready to see them, they would have everything they needed, and I would just talk to them and tell them what we were doing. So I dyed yards and yards of fabric. Here I am on the bottom. The top picture is me creating and mixing the dyes. The middle picture, you can see the fabrics that I dyed for the children. And on the ironing board at that was about 4 in the morning, I had ironed all the different fabrics that I made, and you can see the beautiful arrangement of colors, given that I was working with children. And even though this was about a horrible, the worst deadly anti-Semitic act in this country, in American history, I wanted to bring them vibrant, living, beautiful colors to work with, so they could say what they needed to in a way that inspired joy somehow in this nightmare. So on November 2nd, I packed up my supplies. I had markers and scissors and all the fabrics ready to go, and the sun was rising. I couldn't sleep. I was up, well, I don't sleep much anyway, but I got up early, put together all the supplies for the children, and really, and the faculty, and my hope was to bring to fruition their messages of love, hope, healing, and resilience that I knew was eventually going to be seen and will be seen by the community. So, this is a picture of what we did first. Each child was handed, hang on a second, because I have here. I have leftovers from 2 years ago, and I'll talk about this at the end. I brought to the school, those fabrics that you saw were cut up into 4-inch squares of fabric that I had dyed. And on the back, I had fused some adhesive, which would allow me later in the process, which you'll see, to put onto the back of the quilt. So this is how it all started. But before the kids were given their 4-inch squares, they were allowed to rehearse what they wanted to do, because a lot of kids have a lot of ideas and they don't like it and they throw it away. So they were given a 4-inch square and a 4-inch square cardboard template that Stephanie, the art teacher, had prepared ahead of time. And they traced the 4-inch square so that it would mimic what they actually were going to use. And inside that, they rehearsed their leaf for the Tree of Life. So this is a young little boy who was doing that. The children were repairing the world, and we talked about what that meant. Here they are creating leaves for the Tree of Life synagogue that I am making, along with their love, their prayers and compassion. And if you see, they're all sitting around the table, and they had all the supplies they needed, and they talked and they shared ideas, and they looked things up on their cell phones for ideas, and they worked so collaboratively. These are the younger children at work, and you can see they just really were focused. They understood. We talked about a very important, I'm going to pause this for a second, a very important Jewish word called tikkun olam, which means repairing the world. And the children, we talked about how they were vehicles of love, and they could repair the world through their little leaves. And as they drew their leaves, we talked about what they wanted to say and how they wanted to say it, knowing that there was no rules. They could do whatever they felt. And I'd like to share, if I may, a video of the children, and you can see the pride and joy and the contemplation and the insight that these little beings have when they were writing their Trees of Life leaves. So I'm going to share this with you for a moment. Can everybody see this? Wait, raise your hand if you can see it. Okay, great. So I will let you listen.
My name is Eliza. Be the person that does the right things. Sending lots of love. We love you lots.
Beautiful. Thank you.
My name is Thea. I hope you feel better.
Beautiful.
My name is Matt. You are awesome.
Beautiful.
My name is Lucas. Always be yourself. Hopeful.
Beautiful. Thank
My
you.
name is Raphael. I love you.
I love you. Beautiful.
Try to this for joy. My name is Emily. I love you. Love and life. You will be loved.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, sweetheart.
Everything is hope and love. My name is Charlotte.
Thank you, Charlotte.
My name is You'll always be loved.
Beautiful.
My name is Michelle. Hope is still out there.
Absolutely. That's beautiful.
Even in darkness, you will always be loved.
Thank you.
My
What's your
name is
name?
Maeve.
Maeve. Thank you, Maeve. Thank you. Children, you are amazing healers of the world.
We're second graders.
You are second graders and you are awesome. So that was just a little 2-second snippet of what I saw. I just want to bring you back to this page. Give me a minute. I'm not that cool. Play current slide. So these are the children and what they created during this process and how they felt doing it. They were empowered by this. They shared these feelings without any inhibition. It was unbelievable. These are little samples of what it looked like when they worked on their leaves. And this is ultimately what I took home and added to the Tree of Life. The room was filled with so much love that day that I had kids crawling all over me and each other and sharing ideas. And they understood how important it was that what they were doing was going to someone else. It had nothing to do with them. Whoops, if you're live, could you mute? Thanks. Here again, you can see there's little kids, and up in the right-hand corner was some seniors. I have to say some of these young men were really quiet and really inside themselves and thinking, and they put so much thought into it. The older kids really had more sophisticated conversations about what it meant to be able to come from a place of love when they knew that what happened was absolutely horrific. I'm going to pause again to share another little video to give you an example of what it was like for the older kids, some of them. With me, so I know how this has made you feel, doing this, and knowing you're the only school doing this from, from here.
Special.
Yeah. Why?
Because we're helping people and back to like there's so much negative energy going around these days. So like just giving something back makes it really special. And
You're right.
it makes it, I don't know.
Anybody else want to add to that?
I have something I'd like to add. I just found out I'm going to be a grandma for the second time. And so what this means to me is that we're going to be leaving the world better than we found it.
Yes, that's beautiful. To life, right?
Yeah,
To life. That was Stephanie, who is the art teacher there, and she was the one that allowed so much of this to happen. So I'm going to try to go back to this slide I was just on. Forgive me. Well, play from current slide. Okay. And here you can see the fabrics that were cut up for the kids, and they could come and take what they wanted. We all had lots of discussions about what it is they wanted to say. And many of them really believed that they believed in their core that what they had to say mattered and that it would make a difference. It wasn't just an arts and crafts project. They really believed in what they were doing. And again, on the top, you can see the children writing on the wall. What I had everyone do, and you'll see it at the end of this talk, I made sure that every name of every single individual that put anything on this quilt has been recorded and documented forever. So every child and every adult that did something, their name is included in the piece of artwork. And again, these are the older kids working. And I kept, you can see on the table, I had a printout of all the victims' names, and we held it up and we talked about it. We did talk about, again, the idea behind the message of Tikkun Olam, which means to repair the world, and what it meant for them to be repairers of this world, and how important it was that they took pride in that, and they owned it, and they really came through magnificently. You can see each and every child, their faces aglow with pride and joy and confidence, and they did it together, just flowed from 8:30 in the morning till the bell rang at the end of the day. Here's the little ones. And there they are again with Stephanie. That little basket is, we would go around the room and everybody would put their leaves in and we would collect them together. So at that point, I was finished at the school. I had done all the work that I needed for these children to create the leaves. And in my mind, I already had a vision of what it was going to be like finished. It wasn't something I created as I went. I saw the finished product before I started this. So I had to take a moment here to thank Dr. Christine Flynn and Stephanie Seriani Needham and Kathleen and all these children and teachers from the Shelter Island Free School. They literally opened their doors to me at the crack of dawn, and we were there all day. And together we began with grace and ease and humility to create the leaves that would become the main message of this piece of art. The children shared their thoughts and feelings for peace and healing and resilience. And I have to say, there were children from all backgrounds, and every one of them truly understood and embodied the meaning of repairing the world and Tikkun Olam. But there was only one child in the whole school that day, but that was Jewish, and he was half Jewish actually. So it wasn't about being Jewish. It was about being a human being who could feel and care about others who were suffering. And through their artwork and their drawing and their words and their expression of love, together, that's what Tikkun Olam is. And they did it. And for that, I am bottomlessly grateful. Here they are signing their names. And then again, that Friday night, as I said, my husband and I went off to Greenport, where there's a very old, beautiful, beautiful, tiny little shul. And together we participated in the show up for Shabbat. And it was especially meaningful that night to be together. The next day, over the weekend, I opened my doors to my studio, and I had taken all the kids' squares, and you can see them up on the design wall, and friends and neighbors came by to contribute their leaves as well. And it was quite exciting to see them come. It's very interesting, though. The children, they just dove right in. They were spontaneous. They weren't self-conscious. They weren't judgmental. They didn't worry about what everybody thinks about what they were doing. The adults had a harder time. I found that many of the adults were, very critical and very self-conscious. So it was an interesting experience, juxtaposed having just worked with the kids who were so uninhibited, so open, so willing to just get it out there and put their thoughts and feelings down. The adults had a little bit of a harder time, but at the end, it was beautiful. This leaf actually says, "The world is always turning toward the morning." Later that week, we were hit again with another horrible anti-Semitic attack in Binghamton, and it was on Election Day, and then again at Columbia University. And I just kept creating this tree of life through it all, and it's how I got through. I attended the Anti-Defamation League's annual conference with my daughter that year because she actually was working with them. And it was extremely powerful given what had just happened in the world. and we celebrated Hanukkah, really, really emphasizing that year in December, the intense need to surround ourselves ever more with light and love and healing. By the way, this menorah was made by my younger daughter. I think she was 8, and we still use it. So back into the studio, the next step for me was to create the quilt. I knew I needed it to be really, really big. I didn't want it to be small. I wanted it very big, which meant creating a background fabric that was large enough to hold the entire design of the Tree of Life. It meant me getting on the floor and using the fabric I had dyed for the background and creating this one large piece. So that's what I'm doing here. And there it is. That's the back of the quilt after it was dyed. Then I needed to do the same thing for the back. I'm sorry, let me go back if I can. That's the front of the quilt. This is the back. And again, it needed to be large enough to go behind the quilt. So in the tradition of quilting, we have 3 layers: a front, the batting, and the back. And that's what I'm doing here. And of course, my little buddy is always with me, my Oreo, my dog, helping me, bringing me joy. This is what it looks like when it was all put together and quilted. It took an enormous amount of energy because it's heavy. It's very, very heavy. What you see hanging on the left is the tree branches that I drew earlier, and you'll see how I did that in a minute. But I was very proud of myself here because it took a lot of work to get that big, big piece of fabric under the sewing machine and create the designs, which you'll see up close. So here it is with the Tree of Life background created, dyed, and sewn. And I had already, on that paper there is the tracing of what I was going to use as my freehand design for the trunk of the tree. The front is hand dyed a soft yellow, and the Tree of Life would then be filled with the messages from the children and from the youngest to the oldest. And I have to say that each student, without any effort besides their intense concentration and love, shared their pure love and wisdom for all of us to be blessed with. This is a young woman who was a senior in the high school, Maria Carbajal. I could not lift this quilt to get it under the machine and quilt it. It was too heavy. So, and I couldn't get the smooth quilting lines that I wanted. So she held it for me because I couldn't, otherwise it would droop and hang and I couldn't do it. So she helped me hold it up so it was light enough for me to manipulate and do the free motion work that I wanted to do. She was absolutely a joy to be with. It was the middle of February. It was cold and it was really kind of nice having company in the studio. This is what the close-up of that background looks like. There's probably, I would say, 5, 10, 20,000 stitches in this. And it's completely free motion quilted. And I did it in a pattern of swirls because I wanted there to be a sense of motion and energy and movement and renewal. Here are the leaves that the children made out of their squares. So I took their squares home and the squares from our neighbors that came by and began to create leaves. I tried to keep the shape of what they did, and I'm going to show you what happened with them. Again, I'm going to close this for a second and share a little video with you of what it looked like when the leaves were being put onto the quilt. I think I'm going to do this. Maybe not. Yeah, okay. So you can see in this picture, the trunk is already on. And this was the leaves were put on initially with pins because I had to really make sure that the balance of the way the leaves went on and the messages were spread out in a way that really filled the whole tree in a way that felt balanced and that I wasn't putting too many words that were similar in the same place, but rather that it spread across the entire tree. So they're not on permanently yet. They've been put on with pins. But you can see the work in detail from those original quilts and that white fabric that I dyed in the bucket, this is what they became. It gives you a chance to see them up close. At that point, here's that same problem I have. Oh, I'm getting better at this. This is what they looked like before they were pinned up. And again, here is one of the leaves that the children did before I cut the shape that became one of those leaves. I know this looks like a weird picture, but I put it here because what I wanted to show you was how you can see based on my size, and I'm up on a ladder, how big it was. But what I'm actually doing here is cutting all the little threads that were hanging, and I needed to get all the little threads off the back of this foundation piece before the tree of life work progressed. The next step for me was adding the trunk of the tree. And here I am sketching out what I wanted the base of the trunk and the leaves to look like. And this was then fused onto fabric that I dyed. So again, you can see how large it is compared to me. I'm 5 feet 2 inches on a good day. So you get a sense of what it looks like. I included 11 branches on this tree of life for the 11 victims. It was very, very important that there be only 11 branches. Here is the tree of life now with those leaves finally in place, my final decision that this is now how I wanted it. And at this point, on the back of every one of these leaves was some paper that has glue, and I took off the paper, and then I began to press them on. And again, there was another horrible anti-Semitic attack. This was in France, and the tree was on the wall. The pain went through my heart. And the next morning, we continued to make the tree of life. I was back in the city briefly during this process because I got to see my children, my younger daughter, who I don't get to see very often. She lives in North Carolina where she's a graduate student, and she and her fiance were able to put on their leaf. And I think I can read this to you if I try. It says, "Dear Tree of Life congregants, we hope that there are better times and days ahead. Even in the darkest of times, we hope you and we wish you peace and support you through all of this. And we stand by you again and again, and we send you hope and love." Here is the tree of life as the leaves were permanently placed down. And you could see this is not a sad image. It is joyful. It is bright. Their colors, their jewel tones, colors of life, and continuing on. And I added here 11 birds for the 11 victims to surround the tree of life as well. And these are close-ups of the thread work that I did. At the bottom, there were floating leaves as well. And in the center, there's a prayer. In this picture, the leaves are now permanently placed. And then I asked my husband, who does beautiful calligraphy, to do this threefold blessing for the center, for the Star of David. And he wrote the prayer initially on paper, and then I photographed it. And then I printed that photograph of it directly onto the hand-dyed fabric that I made. And then ultimately, at this point, I knew I was going to add 11 birds in memory of the 11 victims. But once everything was in place, I would add the birds. You can see the prayer here printed. And what it translates to is, "May the Lord show you kindness and be gracious to you. May the Lord bestow favor on you. May the Lord grant you peace." And given that this was going to a synagogue, I felt this was one of the most appropriate things we could put into the middle of this tree of life on this Star of David. I added the birds, and they are circling this tree of life. It is definitely a circle of life. And this next step was I decided to add Swarovski crystals to the bird's eyes so that they would really radiate color and life and light in memory of all of these victims. So this is how I put them on. They're heat set permanently down. There they are. And you can see the thread work is all done to bring out the feathers of the birds. And I used multicolored variegated threads to create each bird for each victim. And this is how it went down. It was me working on this machine and sewing around the birds. Now we're into March. And I ended up sewing down the leaves that the children put down with clear thread. I didn't want my thread work to in any way cover up what they did. So when you look up close at the trees, you'll see the indentations from the thread work, but you won't see thread because I dared not cover up any of the work that the children and my friends did who came to put their leaves on the tree. So at that Sunday here, I did some final thread work and everything was sewn in place. The only thing left to do was to outline that beautiful calligraphied Star of David and make labels for the back of the quilt with all the names of the participants. Here you can see the thread work of the calligraphy that my husband Jonathan did. I used this fantastic, beautiful thread that really bordered it, I think, really nicely and connected it to the branches and the earth tone of the tree and the roots of the tree, because this tree had to speak to the strength that we all needed to get through this. Again, it was Friday night, and the prayer, may you be protected and blessed with kindness and grace, and may you know peace. The next step was bringing back the community. And I needed help finishing it up, putting on what's called the binding. And I will be very transparent and tell you it's my least favorite part of creating these pieces of art. It's a finishing technique, but it has to be done with love and commitment because it really makes the edges beautiful. I called on my lady friends and guy friends, and they, again, this amazing community of love and just yes, yes, they showed up and we got on the floor and everybody helped me. We had my neighbor June and good friend June Shatkin. Again, Stephanie showed up, Eleanor Labrosi, who's an amazing photographer, and took a lot of the pictures that you're gonna see coming up. In fact, that's her on the bottom right, helping me. Again, it was hard to move it through the machine. These women just came together to create hope and healing and light and love and peace, and yes, to fight anti-Semitism. This is then, we took it to the dining room table. And I just feel like this picture on the bottom says everything. The collaboration, the love, the light coming in. We laughed, we cried, we hugged. It was beautiful to have this energy in the home. And spring was coming, it was March. We had gone through a very cold winter. And I saw the end was near in creating this. And here it is. This is the Tree of Life for Pittsburgh. Eleanor came to my studio and photographed it. She donated her time and took these pictures. And then I also had it professionally done again in the city by a photographer I use for my professional artwork, Christopher Burke. And here's the final Tree of Life. It is with my profound gratitude and love to all the members of the Shelter Island community that I created this. My next step was to offer this to Rabbi Meyer at the synagogue. And I got in touch with them there and we spoke, and I'm in touch with a wonderful woman there who is ready to receive it whenever I'm ready to send it, knowing that it's not going to be shown at least for another year. So selfishly, I'm holding on to it in case there's other opportunities to talk about it and display it. Here's those, I showed you the children who wrote their names on the wall, on the poster board. This is each and every one of them. And you can see on the right, we have Catholic, we have agnostic, we have Catholic, atheist, we have Catholic, we have that Episcopalian, Presbyterian, Baptist, Catholic, Roman Catholic, all these people. And they were given the choice to share their religious beliefs or not. So there's a lot of blanks. It didn't really matter. But I wanted to make sure that every human being and every one of those people who came and did this, that we knew their names. And you can see how beautiful, even this looks like art to me. I would be remiss if I didn't thank these three people. And these are the women that said yes to me the day after the shooting, that Sunday when I called them. And I asked them to share their thoughts and feelings about what it was like. And I'd like to invite you to take a moment to read what they said, and I'll be quiet. I think, has everyone had enough time to see this? Raise your hand. Thank you. So where am I? Can you see? I think, that was my last slide. But before I open the floor for questions, I wanted to take you for a little walk over to the Tree of Life and let you get a close look at it. This is my studio, by the way. So I'm going to get up close and let you see some of the work. And you can see what I was talking about when I talk about, you can tell that there's nothing covering the children's and my neighbor's words, but you get a sense of the texture of it as we get up close. And here is that beautiful center that my husband calligraphied.
Susan, can you end the screen sharing?
Yes. Thanks, Jeff. I'm going to end the screen sharing.
Yes.
Hi. You can all unmute right now. If you want me to go back for a better
Go back
look.
for a second.
Okay. Is this better? First, I'll stand closer so you can really get a sense of the size of it. And then I'll come in close and you can see the work.
Should be able to get it on speaker view, but
We can hear you, Elaine.
I'm looking to get you as larger, Susan.
I don't know how to do that.
Susan, this is Mom. We actually saw the close-ups of the leaves before, so,
That's okay.
don't worry that we're not aware of what
Here-
those leaves say.
Here's the birds. I would love for you just to get one good vision of the birds. And if I can't, I can't. It's kind of hard. So I'm going to sit down, and if anybody has any questions or thoughts or reactions, I would be open to hearing from you.
Susan?
Yes?
Victoria,
Hi.
when did you have the people at the temple in Pittsburgh, have they actually seen the quilt?
They've seen pictures.
They have not seen it, felt it, touched it, anything?
No, because the first year they weren't accepting anything. It was too devastating down there. And they were I spoke to someone and she was very honest, and she said it would be rolled up and put in a basement somewhere. And I said, no, that's not happening.
Okay.
And then I happened to speak to her very recently, and they now have this gift committee. And so once it's ready to go down there, it might eventually be safe to be hung in the synagogue, in another synagogue, in a Jewish community center. I don't care where it ends up, because I know it'll be special and it'll be loved and taken care of and appreciated. So, because they will make sure that it's going to the right venue. So for now, it's I have the baby. Yeah.
Is it going to be hard for you to part with it?
I'm sorry?
Is it going to be hard for you to part with it?
No, I'm eager to have it go there. I was invited down at one point early on to present it, if I wanted to, in an alternative Shabbat service that they were having in another synagogue that they're now using. But I just didn't feel like it was time yet. And I knew that there was an exhibition coming up also that I wanted it to be seen in. So I wanted to share it more. And I knew after that, even if I did bring it down, they were going to roll it up and still have to store it. So I still want to keep it for as long as I can until I know there's no more, I'm done with it. And I don't know that I am yet in terms of sharing the story and teaching about the power of creating love and healing through art, and especially through children, because they're little angels, truly angels, and they have no bias and they have no filter. It's so pure what they did. And we spoke, I'm showing you pictures, but the little ones, we toned down the story. We didn't tell them the horror of what happened. Because it was not for me to do that. That's their parents' responsibility, not mine. And I didn't want to traumatize anybody, clearly. But I did want to tell them that when people are hurt or injured or in pain or something sad happens, it's how wonderful it is to be able to be of service to them and give to them and be that vessel of love. And we can do that through art. And that's what we did for the little kids. The teenagers, we had some pretty heavy conversations. And from little to high school senior, we did talk about Tikkun Olam and repairing the world, and how using art allows me to get my pain out of my body, where I tend to feel pain. And I love the concept of art coming through through some source, through my heart and out through my hands, because I really use my hands, especially when I'm working with the machine. So that's how I see it.
I have a question. With regard to the swirls in the background, are you physically taking the fabric and turning it? How do you get the swirl?
I move if this is the fabric onto the machine, this is why I needed help having it, because it's 77 inches wide.
Right.
And it's 3 layers thick.
Right.
I move the fabric, and I use the needle like a paintbrush.
Okay.
So I'm moving the fabric, and I create each swirl under the needle.
Unbelievable.
And you dye the fabric with regular dye, or is there a special?
I use Procyon dyes. Yeah.
Susan, was this shown at the Eastern Long Island Quilt Show?
Yes.
I thought I
Yes.
had seen it. That's why I wanted to join this tonight. It was wonderful.
Thank you. I'm very proud to say
Yeah.
that it won a first place award.
Oh, good. It was wonderful.
Well, it won it, and the children won it.
You orchestrated it.
Thank you.
Susan, this is Mom.
Yes, Mother.
My cup runneth over.
Oh, thank you.
You're quelling. You're quelling.
Thank you.
Mm.
Somebody was going to talk. Any other
Susan,
questions?
it's Roz.
Hi, Roz.
Did you find, I think you were probably working on this, or maybe it was finished, but during COVID, did you find it was healing for you to be doing something like this during COVID?
So I meant to bring this up. We need to screen share again for a second, if that's okay, because I will show you what I did through COVID as a result of this Tree of Life. If I may, do you mind if I screen share for a minute, everybody?
No.
Here we go. We're getting good at this, Jocelyn. Okay, this is going to be tricky. Hold on. Okay, what I did during COVID was I made 1,100 masks, all of which I donated. And this is an example of some of them.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Many of you received them. I donated them to frontline workers. Here they are.
Mm.
Oh, my goodness.
I made 1,100 and I made them for nurses, for children, for the entire IGA workers. I'm not kidding. Where are these pictures? Oh, here's a picture of the healthcare workers. I made them for it. And this was a hospital in New York City. So I just, you know, when trauma strikes for me, I need to make something beautiful. There's enough pain in the trauma. So my response is, how do I help heal the trauma? And I do that as a therapist. And I do that as an artist. I don't make, I just need to take a sip of water. I won't make what I would consider, I don't think except for one piece of art, I've ever used black in my work, black fabric. Is this enough of the masks, you guys? You get the picture, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
So in answer to your question, Roz, and I'll stop screen sharing, is that was what came next. During COVID, I believe in science and I believe we need to wear masks. And what I did during COVID was I made masks. I did not ask for money. People offered to pay me. I accepted donations, which covered some of the fabric. I was with my daughter all through COVID, who was pregnant. And she stayed with me because her husband got very sick with COVID. And so they were apart for most of her pregnancy. And when he came, I will tell you an anecdotal story, which will tell you how careful we were. My husband and my son-in-law, once my husband went back to work, he couldn't work for 3 months. He was a dentist. Knowing that he was going back to a high-risk profession, and my son-in-law had COVID and then went back, he's a doctor, he was in the hospital. The men were relegated to the basement. Problem was, I don't have a bathroom in the basement. So being the innovative woman that I am, I got them a lovely porta potty. And the way this relates to the diligence with which I was being careful about COVID, but the mask making was really important to me. I saw patients every day, all day, till about 6, made a dinner. I was alone. And then my daughter was pregnant. She went to bed early. I sewed every night till about 2 or 3 in the morning to get these masks made. I had a little table on my driveway with an elephant. Many people know about my elephant. And I would get calls constantly and emails from people who wanted masks. The senior center, I must have made several hundred for them, at least for the entire senior center. And I would leave the masks outside on my little table with the elephant, and they would be there with labels and names for everybody. Every mask had an instruction that I printed about how to take care of it and how to wear it. And I have to say, it was a terrifying time, but I was in a place of joy and purpose because I had people coming in and out of my driveway and waving through the windows and picking up beautiful pieces of colorful masks. So it helped me deal with my terror and theirs. And again, it was fabric and textile. So again, if there's trauma or pain, I make something beautiful and I like to give it away. So,
well done, Susan. Well done.
Can I say something? When Susan, am I on?
Sure, Mom.
Okay, when I was 80, I think, I decided to become bat mitzvah in that little shul that Susan described in Greenport. And Susan made me in Yiddish it's called a talis, my shawl, my prayer. So she made it from scratch with the correct Hebraic rules of how many, whatever you call them. I'm just saying that Susan has always been. Hush.
Thank you, Mom.
Susan's always been a hands-on kid.
Thank you very much. I'm going to mute you now.
Muzzle tough, muzzle tough.
It's good to see you.
So the last thing I want to say is this. I'm going to invite you all to think about how this talk made you feel. And the next time, and it's probably not going to be very late from now with what's happening in this world, I'm going to invite you to pick up a piece of paper, a rag in the house somewhere, a paper bag, a marker, and think of someone you know, stranger you might have met, someone you love in your family, someone in another country who you know is suffering, and send them a love letter with art. Think of someone you know who needs to hear you're thinking about them. Think of someone you know who's in pain, who's sick, who's hurting, who's terrified, who's scared, who's lonely, who's alone, and put something in the mail to them that you've made. And before you make it, the way we started, take a deep breath and say to yourself, I am a vessel of light and love and healing. And then just create and send it. And then notice how you feel. And you can't tell me you're not going to feel better too. Thank you.
Thank you. It was very nice.
Thanks a lot.
Susan, thank you.
Thank you so much for your support and your love. And I hope you you feel joy from this. I do.
A lot. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me, everybody. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
Good night and God bless.
Shabbat shalom.